Hey guys, Glenn Trahan, Alan Brunacini Friday. This is not a hazmat, or is it? Today we're going to be talking about MC4 connectors for solar installations and how they can potentially be a hazardous material. All right guys, so you can see the solar panel comes pre-wired with a positive and a negative connector. These are MC4 connectors, and I've got the one that I cut off of a different one already, and I have the new one that we're replacing it with. Let me show you real quick why we're replacing it. You'll notice that that O-ring and that O-ring, different colors. This is the connector that comes standard from the factory. This is the connector that we're making our extensions, our 10-AUG wiring to meet the 10-AUG wiring that comes from the factory. But when I make an extension with this connector, if I were to try to use this one that comes from the factory, there is a chance that the connector male and the connector female do not have a perfect connection if they're not from the same manufacturer. And that imperfect connection can result in sparking, arcing, and a fire, which here on my concrete roof, not an issue. But if you have a panel that you're dealing with an issue on a flammable surface, that could be what you end up seeing on those newscasts where a solar farm burns down. All right, so let's go for an example. We're going to remove this positive from the panel. We're going to replace it with a new positive that aligns to the rest of the connectors that we're going to make all of our extensions with. Now, I want to point out, when you make these connections, there is a bigger pin and a smaller pin. The bigger pin goes with this male fitting, but you'll notice that it's the female pin, allegedly. Whereas what would be the male version of the pin goes to the female fitting. So make sure you have that. Male and female, so that you have everything together. Some people will tell you that you don't have to remove that. I go ahead and do it anyway because I like to make sure when I get everything done that my gasket is matched up. You'll notice that there are sawtooth edges. I want to make sure that they match up appropriately. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to trim out just the right amount of insulation. This is a 2 insulation cable. I do not cut all the way through the second one. I gently break the second one's last little bit so that it's able to not mess up any of those wires. You'll notice that there are a black and a white insulation on there. And we're going to go ahead and eventually get this guy off. Sorry, I've made a lot of connections today. And remember, because we cut off the male, we want to come back with the male, which means we're going to come back with the larger pin connector, the female. And the way that works, you have to use the special crimp tool that actually will roll this connector onto the wire. I'll show you that in just a second, but we're gonna slide. We put the connector into the crimp tool. We put the wire into the connector. We ensure that all of the wire strands are in there. And then we squeeze. And now, when you look at that connector, you will see that both sides have been rolled onto that wire. This special crimp tool rolls both sides into the wiring, ensuring that that DC connector gets positive contact. Then you're gonna put this in. You'll notice that there's little barbs. So you push it in, it clicks, and now it won't pull off. Then you go ahead and match this seating gasket. This is where your watertight comes into play. And then you go ahead and you screw this on. But then to make sure that your watertight and your connection makes code, you use the provided spanners. You'll go on. Once you've got them on, you're gonna go until it clicks 2 times. Listen carefully. 1, 2. Now that connector is watertight and ready to go. We're gonna do the same thing with the female. All right, so one point that I haven't shown you guys, and want to reach out, the spanners, you need to use 2 of them obviously so you can get good connection on the female and on the male fitting. But you'll notice that right here, I have the connectors already connected. I've got my male and my female together, and you can try to fight this or you can make it easy. The spanners are gonna come with a tool that will slip into these 2 notches. So when you slip it in there, now it compresses it for you and it comes apart very easy. All right, so one of the things that I like to make sure that I do whenever I'm dealing with my electrical, I obviously want to use DC, has stranded wire because the current goes on the skin of the conductor. So I have a THHN 10-AUG, American wire gauge, stranded wire. I like to use a ratcheting cutter so that I get a clean cut and I can cut whatever size cable. If I'm making battery cables, if I'm making whatever, this ratcheting cutter makes it a whole lot easier to have a nice clean cut no matter how thick it is. Now obviously you're not going to want to use this on a 12 AUG or a 14 AUG, but this gives me a nice clean cut so that I can make my connections on a nice clean cut. Now I'm making an extension wire right now to go from the panels to my combiner box so that we can get everything in. This is a temporary setup for just only to last a month or less. So you'll notice that nothing's in conduit. This is all getting moved to the other side of the house. But for right now, we've got some batteries that we want to get charging and we don't want them to go bad on us. So we're just doing a quick temporary setup. Now we're doing the male connector. So we want to use the bigger pin, the female pin. We want to go ahead and put her in our crimper, just like we did for the panels. Same process. You'll notice that the fitting, the terminal connector, is inside the crimper, so that when I push the wire with the insulation all the way to that space and I crimp down, you'll notice that it's rounding both pieces simultaneously. And when I apply the pressure, it rolls both sides into that stranded wire. I've watched other YouTubers pull people with that connector. It's not coming off. So make sure you get your clicks and you're good to go. There's my click. Of course it wants to go all the way, make me fight it, but that's okay. We've got our watertight seal where she goes. Snug this down and you will watch the little fingers seat up in there, trying to get some sunlight in there for you to have good light. I'll snug this all the way down by hand, and then we'll use our spanners to get our 2 clicks. Depending on what company you go with, you might get 1 spanner, you might get 2. Hopefully you get 2 because you want them both. Again, we use the open end on the female side of the connector. We use the nice little shaped side on the male side, and we're going to do 2 clicks. 1, 2. And now we have a watertight connection on our 10-aught stranded. Okay, so I wanted to point out, you'll notice that the connector does not touch the insulation. There is just a micro schism of copper showing. So you know that the insulation is not inside of that crimp, jeopardizing my conductivity. So once we get this clicked in, there's a click. It will not pull off because of those barbs. We'll seat this watertight gasket. You'll notice that the little fingers are well away from the wire, but as we snug everything down where it's supposed to be, again, we want to make this nice and tight. Grab our 2 spanners. One, 2. All right. Now, what we have is we have an extension cable. It's rated for outdoor. It's rated for damp locations. We're good to go with that O-ring and the opposite O-ring for the female that we're going to hook up to. We know we're going to have a watertight connection. We're going to go ahead and we're going to hook into our combiner box with our female fitting first. It goes in the back, so we have access to it. Clicked. We're in position. Gonna come around. We have our male connection, so we're going to get our female, and in an effort to keep everything nice and out of the way, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna hook in, nice and connected. We have to make our other extension cable. Got our wire right here, and we will get that done and we'll have the job finished. So with these fingers, you'll notice that it's nice and loose. Everything goes on. We got everything put in where it goes. We'll go ahead and we'll snug down the cap. Again, we're gonna go hand tight as far as we can go. We'll use our spanners. We'll get her snugged down. One, 2, pop this off and look inside there now. Everything is closed up nice and tight, and it's watertight. So we're good to go. Hey, I just wanted to make sure that I had mentioned when I measured my insulation cutback, you'll notice that it goes just touching inside of the connector, but doesn't really go into the connector. So when I make my crimp, it just barely touches inside. It doesn't go up into there. because we want to make sure that we're not blocking the opposing connector from getting inside where we need to. So just wanted to point that out before we make this last connection. And then we will be all ready to extend that last wire to that last panel. And our array will be complete for the day. All right, nice and engaged. Everything's solid. We've now got matching connectors. Everything's in place. Hopefully, if you're doing solar or if you're helping somebody that's doing it, you now know the importance of using light connectors so you don't have a fire concern, and you now know how to do it. Proper tools and God power, so I don't have to worry about any more electric bills. Love what you got and love where you're at. I'm Glenn Trahan. If you want to like and subscribe, love to have you on board. I generally do hazmat videos, but sometimes I do videos of just life in general, of how to do this or that, because we all have to live. Thanks for being here. See you next time.